Hey YouTube, my name is Trent and this is video number 3 in my series on becoming a professional airline pilot. Now my first video was published about 2 weeks ago and it was titled "Is 53 Too Old to Become an Airline Pilot?" And much to my surprise, that video has been viewed now 6,500 times and there's been hundreds of comments that have been left. And I have learned a great deal, both from the positive and from the negative comments, because there was a few people who were, a little bit Debbie Downer, like, "Oh, dude, you're too old. You never, it's not going to work out for you." And so in today's video, I want to share with you the facts that I have learned by speaking with people who are in the industry, friends of mine who are pilots and so forth, to dispel any fears that somebody around my age might have about it being too late. Because I can assure you, based upon what I'm going to share with you in this video, that it is not too late for me at all. So a couple of things that I want to address based upon some feedback from the first video. First off, some people said, "Hey dude, you're never going to make it to the majors, you're too old." Well, guess what? I don't really care, because life at the majors may, depending upon how things go, and I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment, being at the majors might actually not be that great. And the other thing that I commented on was, I said, if you're earning an average of $200,000 a year over the 20 years, this is $4 million of earnings and so forth. And I think some people concluded from that, and I don't blame them because they didn't have extra information that I didn't provide, that I have no other source of income. And so this entire decision is just come down to a spreadsheet with, can I get a high enough ROI on my investment from pilot wages? And trust me, in my situation, there's a whole bunch more going on. I own a business, I have income from other sources, so it doesn't all come down to pilot wage. Now, with that said, I still have a very clear path to a $200,000 a year income in a fairly short period of time. So, with the preamble out of the way, let's dive into what I learned on a call with a good buddy of mine today who is a captain at Delta Airlines. He is also a pilot mentor for Delta's Propel program. So if you aren't familiar with what Propel basically is designed to take someone who has zero flight time, put them through their Delta's official partner school, which is called Skyborn. They're down in Florida. They'll have their hands on you for about 9 months. You'll spend about $84,000 in tuition, and then that puts you on a path to be a Delta pilot. So the first thing that I wanted to understand is, is that really worth it? Or is what I'm doing, I'm going to a school in Ohio, which I'll be leaving. I'm going to be driving away from my house here in Boise on May the 1st. I'll be there by May 4th. I'll be in a plane by May 5th. Is which approach is better, and what are the pros and cons? Because the approach that I'm doing, I can get everything done in 4 months and I'm going to spend only about half of that tuition amount. Am I really penalizing myself if I wanted to get to the majors? And again, caveat, I'm not even sure that I want to get to the majors, and I will explain why as I brief you on the details of my call with Alex. So the first thing to understand about the majors, and this applies to the regionals as well, but in my case, so I've already been accepted into SkyWest's pilot cadet program. That means I have an employee number and I'm already building seniority, and I live in base. In other words, SkyWest has a base right here in Boise. And so if you aren't familiar with reserve and call out times and crash pads and deadheading, these are things that I didn't have a good enough understanding of, and thanks to some of the comments that I received from people, I now have a much better understanding of, because I thought, man, I better go learn about this stuff. So let's start there. So reserve is when, if you are, for example, if you live in Boise and your base is New York, and this could very well happen to you when you get to the majors as a low seniority first officer, they might base me out of New York, and that means that when I'm on reserve, I'm gonna have to go to New York, hang out at my crash pad, get paid my minimum reserve, and I might not get any flight time at all. Now, I'll still get paid, but I might not get any flight time at all. And that could, a really shitty posting like that, that could last for like 6 months. And for Alex, it did. That actually happened to him, and he hated his life for those 6 months. Conversely, at a regional, if I am based out of Boise, I have like a 15-minute drive to work. So the whole being on reserve thing, no problem. I can just sit in my house. Needing to have a crash pad? No thanks, because I got my own bed. So it makes, for someone like me, the staying at a regional and getting promoted to captain potentially actually much more attractive than going to a major. Because yeah, you know, at the major you can make more money. But let's dive into that make more money thing for a little bit. Obviously, I've already kind of discussed the lifestyle aspects. You know, it can really suck at the beginning if you are not living in base. So if you look at SkyWest program, here's what makes SkyWest attractive to me. Number one, they have a reputation of really high quality jet pilot training for pilots, or rather training for pilots in jets. And so if I did ever want to go to the majors, having come out of SkyWest, it's a pretty, from what I have been told by my friend who is now working for SkyWest, it looks pretty good on the resume. So it kind of makes me think, well, you know, maybe I don't really need to spend the extra 40 grand to go to the Propel school, which is Skyborne. Maybe my approach works just fine. And so that's the decision I've made. I'm going to go off to Ohio here in less than 2 weeks, and I'm going to go to that school, and I'll be done in 4 months. When I get to SkyWest, the other thing that Alex told me about regionals is that the promotions are happening so much faster than ever before because of this pilot shortage. So what happens is the majors are sucking pilots up from the regionals. So the majors aren't the ones that are really hurting from the pilot shortage. It's the regionals, because they don't have anybody to suck up into the regionals other than, you know, recent people like me who would have a CFI, you know, you've got your 1,500 hours, you got your ATP, or you don't even have your ATP yet, you got your 1,500 hours and you were a flight instructor. So when you look at the pay scale of SkyWest, the first officer has something in the order of 80, 90 bucks an hour, something like that. And then a captain is about 140. And by the time you're a 3-year captain, you know, it's about 150. And so you think, well, man, am I really capped out at $150,000 a year? So I want to share with you a comment that actually reinforces what Alex told me. Because Alex said, he said, that doesn't sound right. He says, Trent, I have flown with SkyWest captains who are making $250. So my thinking on that is, well, I got into this for a love of flying and with one goal. If I could make just anything north of $200,000 a year flying an airplane, being a part-time job, so that I could use the rest of my time to invest in real estate, I would be happier than a clam. And what I've learned is that staying at a regional will help me to accomplish that goal in a very short period of time. So for example, if I'm living in base, I have no deadheading. If I am a captain within 3 years, which is totally doable from what Alex told me, that means I'll have plenty of time, and that means I could be in the $200,000 earning range. So you might say, well, hey man, how's that working out? Because how's that possible? Because the pay scale for SkyWest is only 150 bucks an hour. These are the guaranteed minimums. So just because you're making $150 an hour, so that equates to roughly $150,000 a year if you fly the minimums, well, guess what? There's ways to make much more than that at a regional airline as a captain. So here is a comment from Alan Bald. He started his airline journey at 51, just 2 years younger than me. At the time, he was a single-engine instrument-rated pilot. So he went on, he got his multi-engine rating, and at 26 hours of multi-engine, he was hired by Piedmont Regional Airlines as a first officer. So this is probably in the order of 5 to 6 years ago. And at the time, he was hired at 48 bucks an hour. So anyone who's been following aviation knows that pilot wages have gone way up in the last year. And if you look at, you know, SkyWest's first officer pay, it is substantially higher than 48. Here's the really interesting part. For the past 5 years, I've been having a ball flying, and I upgraded to captain last year. So again, he was ahead of this really extreme pilot shortage that's in the regionals, and he got to captain in, it sounds like, about 4 years. Now we have this massive shortage at regionals, so maybe captain's possible in 2 years. If it's not 2, more than likely 3. But here's the really cool thing. My pay jumped to $213 per hour in June, and if I make check airman, my pay goes to $420 an hour while teaching. So immediately I was like, well, what the hell is check airman? So I asked my friend David, who now works for SkyWest. Check airman is a captain who has passed the qualifications within SkyWest to fly with brand new first officers. So what that's telling me is that within 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 years, maybe there's some information I don't have. So those of you who are going to crap all over me in the comments, be nice, but give me the information that I don't have. What I'm seeing here is I could probably make captain at a regional. And if I get Boise, I'm living in base. And now by flying more than the minimum hours, I'm going to be making well over $200,000 a year. And if I get this check airman thing, I could make even more money than that. So conclusion number 1 for me, and for anyone else who's in my shoes really thinking about this stuff, that makes this decision to become a pilot this late in life at the age of 53 a complete and total no-brainer, even if I had no other businesses, no other sources of income, nothing, because I think that's a fabulous job with a fabulous lifestyle. I'm going to build seniority in that regional. So by the time I'm 60, 62, 63, I'm going to be near the top. I'm going to be able to pick my routes, bid my lines, and life is going to be pretty darn good. So there's a couple of, let me just look at my pad of notes here. I'll quickly pause the video and see if there's anything else super important I want to talk about. Okay, the only other thing that I wanted to cover is a story that he told me about it. For those of you who really do want to make it to the majors, Alex told me about a pilot who worked for SkyWest for 1 year. He went to Spirit for 6 months, and then he got hired by Delta. So that is a pilot with 1,500 hours. Just 18 months later, he was a first officer at Delta. Now that may or may not be the right decision for you based upon what I'm learning about where your base is, this thing called reserve, which is like being on call, crash pads, call out times, and seniority. I'm not sure that that's really a big thing for me, as I mentioned earlier in the video. I don't know that I ever need to make it to the majors. Now I'm going to make my decisions and such to keep all those doors open to me, and I encourage you to do the same when you're planning how you're going to get your education and so forth. But nonetheless, I just don't really think that that's too terribly important. So we're going to wrap up today's video with an update on my progress, because what I've been doing since I recorded my last video is I've been studying my ass off. I've been using something called, I use Sporties to retake my private pilot's license exam, my FAA exam, because I trained in Canada. I didn't have an FAA exam, and it was just the fastest way to get my FAA certificate. So it took me a couple of days using Sporties Prep to get that. And on my private pilot's license exam, I got a 90%, and I did that on April the 13th. I then signed up for Shepherd Air's instrument prep program. Brilliant program. I studied for about 50 hours, just knocked it out. On April 18th, I wrote my instrument exam, passed it with an 88%. Then just this morning, without getting any additional prep or anything, I wrote the CFII because my mentor said, well, it's really just another instrument exam. It took me 23 minutes and I got 94%, and I did not purchase any prep course for the CFII. I simply used the instrument prep course, and the questions were almost identical, to be honest with you. I didn't see any new questions that I hadn't seen by going through the Shepherd Air prep program. So when I finish recording this video, I'm going to buy Shepherd Air's commercial prep. I'm going to study over the weekend. I'm actually going to, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write a practice exam. If I manage to score over 90% without even looking at the material, because I just recently passed the private, and there's a big overlap between commercial and private, I'm going to get my endorsement and I'm going to schedule my exam and I'll be writing that thing on Monday. But if I don't score 90, then I'm going to just simply study the way that Shepard designs for me to study. And I anticipate finishing my commercial probably midweek next week. And if I can manage it, I'm also going to get my CFI done before I depart for Ohio on May the 1st. Now, I'm not super concerned whether I get that done before May 1st or not, but nonetheless, probably the next video you're going to hear from me is going to be in early May when I'm getting in the airplane twice a day, flying, and all the fun stuff starts. So this was an overly long video, but I hope it was super rich with information for people like me who are a little later in life, who are thinking about making a career out as a pilot. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. If you have criticisms, leave them in the comments. If you just have words of encouragement or you want to cheer me on, leave them in the comments, because the more and please do give the video a thumbs up, because I've learned, if this video had, my previous video, which I'll link to in the description, is 53 Too Old to Become a Pilot. If it hadn't got as popular as it did, I wouldn't have got all the comments that I got, and I wouldn't have realized that I need to learn more stuff about regionals versus majors and in-base versus out-base and reserve and call-out time and all this stuff. And so I want to thank all of you who have joined me on my journey so far, because it has been just a blast, and I can't wait to keep knocking out more videos for you guys in the future. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and I want to hear from you in the comments. And again, subscribe, click the bell, share it on Facebook, do whatever you can. Please, thank you so much. Bye-bye.